I'm joined by Michael Blackburn from the VFX team behind Warrior Nun.
Hey, it's nice to see you. And yeah, it's great to be part of these things and be able to help sort of inform the fans and I guess help promote the show. So yeah, glad to have a chat.
Well, I love that the team behind Warrior Nun is so socially aware and socially active. It's nice to have so many people connected. I mean, we get Simon, we have the writers, we have directors, of course, again, the VFX team like yourself, answering questions, or just even just to enjoy watching people who share edits and put up little art or more than little art, very detailed, perfect art.
Yeah, the fans are pretty intense, and I think that's great. I've only really worked on one other show that really, or one other film that really had sort of this sort of intensive fan sort of reaction afterwards that we were a big part of, and that was Iron Man. So so when we worked on and just to give a bit of introductions about me, I'm the VFX supervisor for Warrior Nun. I work at a company called the Embassy Visual Effects, and I work with a team of 30 to 40 artists, and um, I can't take credit for all of their work, right? Like I'm I'm just kind of a creative go between Simon and my team. And so, I help them um sort of hit the marks, the story marks that they need to hit, and then I turn around and sell it to Simon, and find out if that's what he's looking for or something else. So by all means, it's not me doing all these things myself. It's very much my team, and they're a great creative group of people. So, but yeah, the fans of Warrior Nun are great, and they're so into the show, and it's so great to see. And yeah, the only other show that I've worked on like that was Iron Man, where we knew we were working on this cool film, but we didn't really realize what impact it was going to have till after it came out. So yeah, it's cool. It's cool to see all this stuff online and on Twitter and all these edits and things. So
Well, we all appreciate the engagement, the feedback, answering the questions, and just all the little aspects that you share with us socially here. It's really cool to have like a direct connection. We don't always have, like you're saying, like you don't always have, we don't always have that aspect too. And I think a lot of people right now who have consumed watching the show just are so entranced by every single aspect as I have become myself. I mean, I was a fan of the series from the beginning in season one, and to see the journey that we've gotten between the characters, the graphics, the storylines has just been an absolute masterful art and art form to be able to witness.
yeah, season two was really fun to work on. And again, season one, we put a lot of energy into season one. It was great to work on. And then the pandemic hit, and we all immediately had to sort of figure out how to go home and work remotely, and we finished season one remote, the last handful of shots. And it was kind of clunky working that way, but we managed to finish it. And then since we're all home and production kind of dried up, we were busy with other kinds of work. We were doing we did work on commercials as well as TV and film. And so we were doing a whole bunch of um all CG commercials between the two seasons because nobody could go film anything because of the unknowns with COVID, and yet more people were watching TV than ever. And so a lot of these companies wanted to produce ads for various things to get in front of people, new products and stuff. And so we were really busy, and we took that time to sort of improve our remote working setup to the point where we're now basically a hybrid company. And we have the office. People can come work in the office if they want. People can stay home if they want. And we're trying to just work how the artists want to work. And we did all of season two this way. And so, but it was great. It was great to do that, and it was a great season to work on. super fun, creative show. So
I was gonna say, I mean, Warrior Nun came out sort of the season one when the pandemic was sort of starting, beginning sense of in season one, and then we had to wait 2 years to get season two. And in that time, I'm sure the development for all of you has kind of only amplified, and took the opportunity to pivot and bring it even further for us here in season two.
yeah, we knew season two was happening, whatever, a while after season one came out, and we started getting scripts and information about what what kind of stuff we had to develop for the show. Um, and so we knew we were doing wings. We knew we were doing a couple other new effects like this spirit energy that Jillian can see with her amber glasses. And what else were we doing? Suzanne's like nun shield because she had different powers, the halo or whatever more advanced powers, I don't know, but she has different powers with the halo than Ava, so we had to develop a few other like looks and magic types for the season. um and that was actually a really interesting challenge for the entire season. Was this season seemed to have a new kind of magic every as we were every episode seemed to have something new magic in it, right? Adriel pointing at the Pope, making the room shake and his eyes glowing. Adriel having his like power fight with Ava at the end. What else did we do? We zapped the Pope. We had to make lightning happen on top of the building. All these things. Kind of. We ended up.
Locusts and
Yeah, we had locusts. We had walking on water. We
plagues.
had
Yeah.
we had plagues. We had portals, people coming out of portals, going into the portals, wraiths coming out of portals. You know,
Trash.
it,
Yeah.
yeah. There's a whole whack of stuff. Not just one Tarrasque, but six of them, and so we had a lot of stuff to do this season, but it was great.
I mean, they kind of gave you quite a bounty put before you. And I wanted to ask, of course, how this all becomes blueprinted in a way. You're talking about, Simon, or someone, saying like you've got wings, you've got eyes, you've got this, plagues, you've got this, and how does the blueprint of it all sort of construct and begin?
We do a pass on the scripts, and sort of very early on break them down and sort of make assumptions about what will be visual effects and what won't be. And then there's a discussion with the team about what they can achieve practically or with makeup, and then what will have to stay in sort of our world. And and by going through that process, we sort of identify development items that have to be worked on for the show. The crown was another one, right? The crown of
The
thorns.
thorn.
So so that process happens very early on, and then it's a collaboration the whole way through. As planning and shooting begins, decisions get made. Oh, hey, we found a location for this. Maybe we don't need to have visual effects fill in a background, or make it look like Switzerland, right? Instead, maybe we found a location that works for that in Spain, things like that. And so there ends up being sort of a back and forth dialogue, and that happens all the way through, right up into the last day of shooting, where once they've wrapped, um, and the footage starts getting edited, the story starts getting told. Um, the things that we thought were visual effects, usually are. Some things they manage to achieve in camera, or they achieve with creative editing to sort of tell the story. And some things they didn't realize were a problem shows up in the edit, where somebody's on the wrong side from somewhere, or a conversation, a line of dialogue doesn't quite hit right with somebody else's reaction. And so a lot of things that weren't visual effects become visual effects at the edit stage. And so, all the way from split screens where we'll tweak a reaction, one actor's reaction off of another because they had a better reaction in a different take, and we'll combine takes, right? All the way to painting out stunt mats, and combining takes to make longer takes, to the monsters and the magic and all the other stuff. So yeah, it gets refined constantly once the sort of season starts, from scripts, because there's no other really way to do it. You can't blueprint it all out so successfully and then go execute on it. There's too many surprises when you're shooting. There's too many things that come up when you're doing the edit, that if you didn't constantly kind of refine it and keep it as a dialogue, you wouldn't be successful. You can't plan it that way. It has to be flexible. So
I mean, the VFX really adds another layer and dimension to both like the cinematography and the storytelling aspect that um we see across the screen. Um, how do you continue to kind of balance the organic naturalness and the effects that really kind of enhance the pacing, the drama, the sci-fi? How does that really enhance the immersion that we kind of get when we watch the series? Um,
well, I mean, I'd say that most of it's the directors and the actors, doing that on set. I think that as long as they've done their job and told the story, and the directors and editors put it together, and the pacing's there, um, the visual effects sort of, have it easy to some degree, because all we're doing is we're sort of fitting into the path that's already laid down by all the other departments. There's so much momentum by the time that we get there. I mean, they call it post for a reason, right? Like we're the last. We're other than sound, right? Like and maybe some color grading. We're the end of the road. So um, there's so much momentum as far as the storytelling goes, that we really have to work within the bounds of what was captured through all the other departments and all the rest of the process, and just sort of, find the moments to sort of tell the little bits of story we need to tell within that as effectively as we can. And it works very well. Like we have there's some shots, like some sequences in season 2, particularly in the church in 204, when they're Ava and Beatrice try to fly out of the fight,
mm,
and the Trask grabs them, and that's one of those things where you really have to work within the timing of everything else that's been laid down to sort of tell the last little bit of the story, which is the story of the Trask and what he's doing, and how he gets hit and how he lets them go, and they manage to escape through the window. But yeah, it's very much us working with the material that's there, and just making sure that the magic and the narrative kind of hits for the pieces that we're adding. That's all. And we try to be as impactful as we can with our additions, but we're really relying on the fact that the show's already done, right? Like we're just telling the last little piece of it. An interesting example of that is, say, when Adriel gets blasted by exploding Michael in 208, and we get the creepy laughter, and he stands up and turns around, and his face collects back together. You know, William Miller, the actor playing Adriel, really sort of did all the heavy lifting there for us, as far as like sort of the dramatic angles on Adriel, and his laughter and his reaction of pulling the divinium fragment out of his face. And so, we just made sure that, after he pulled the piece out and he started to lift his head up, there was a nice moment there for us to start showing something odd, something interesting happening there, magic wise. And so that's where we put the start of the healing effect. And so we just look for the moments where we can sort of tell our part of the story, and then we turn around and we sell it to Simon and be like, "Hey, Simon, we made this cool thing. What do you think?" And Simon is amazing to work with, and really lets us have, um, sort of an open field for us to sort of work and add our creativity. He doesn't really, as a filmmaker, he doesn't, and a showrunner, he doesn't try to, um, control everything down to the smallest level. He really wants the team of people he's working with. I think in all departments, including visual effects, to contribute their creativity, because otherwise, kind of, what's the point of having all these artistic people around? You want their contributions to the effort, and as long as it doesn't contradict with some kind of preconceived idea on maybe how the magic works, or how whatever secrets he's got in his head on what's really going on here, he's open to anything. And so as long as we present something cool and kick ass, then he gets on board, and usually is just excited about it, excited to see it. Yeah, I mean, he's cool to work with. Our company, the Embassy Visual Effects, has a development agreement with him, and so with his company. And so if there's a season 3, we'll be working on that. If there's other things Simon's working on, we're likely going to be working on those too. And so I actually ran into Simon on Thursday at our Christmas party. We had a 20th anniversary Christmas party, and so I hadn't seen him for a long time because we were doing it like this, remote. But it was great to see him, and he's so excited about the energy of the fans and the reaction to season 2. So it was good to see him again.
I can't imagine what's goes on in his head, but every detail, every little aspect, every collaboration that we get between writers, directors, again, VFX, it feels sort of like a symphony. Like you get the little build up, you get the storyline coming, then you start getting like the crescendo, and then you get the hero comes to save the day type of stuff. It feels like to me, just watching the again, a beautiful symphony, that it feels so beautifully constructed in that capacity.
Only because you're watching the final result.
Right.
I think
Of
that
course.
I think
I
there's a
mean,
lot of
yeah.
it's a little bit more chaotic along the way, because
Right.
again, there's scheduled nothing was particularly challenging in season 2, other than maybe that big shot with Lilith in episode 1, that sort of bookends episode 1. That
Mhm.
one was a challenge, just due to the nature of how long it was and how complex and how much footage there was to work with. But it the chaos usually comes from outside factors, which it always does, right? Like schedule issues, delays on things. We work with some vendors for helping us with some aspects, some paint and some tracking. And so there's always schedule issues with things like that. There's staffing issues trying to crew up for the show in the middle of the pandemic. Um, so usually the chaos comes from the outside factors, as it always does. If we had all the people and everything was perfect and the schedules were all aligned, I mean, I think this stuff would probably be, this it wouldn't be as much of a job, but it's a job because of all the chaos. And so yeah, I mean, but you shouldn't be able to see that, right? The idea is that
Right.
it's invisible, is that you get presented with a final product, and hopefully it just sings, and you sit there and it all comes together, and all of the departments, all of the work, all the acting, all the props, all the sets, all the locations, all the costumes, everything is up to a level where the chaos is the part that you kind of don't see. And so I think that's probably what makes us successful doing all this, is that we're good at reacting to the changes and the chaos and adjusting along the way. And so, but yeah, I'm glad it came out so well. The season 2 is great. Season 1 is great. It's fun to watch, and it's fun to see it all sort of play together. And my favorite part is I get to hear what things sound like, because
Yeah.
I've been in it for so long, looking at the footage, that I've seen the visuals and I've created the visuals. But then I get to hear what a Trask sounds like when it roars, or what Deidre's face coming back together, the crown sounds like. And that's always fun for me, because we don't do sound, we just do picture. And so the sound is always something exciting to see.
We talk about the chaos and the things that sort of make the series just come together to be so seamless. It's kind of like, making a cake. Sometimes for your recipe you need to adjust, or sometimes, there's a little crack here and you have to kind of cover that up, or, like, but the finished product is beautiful, delicious, and you would never know the bumps that come into adjusting or, fixing a recipe or, the design work as it goes.
Yeah, as long as the final product worked out, then yeah, you don't know any of that stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of small things that actually go into the show that nobody like. Um, that whole end sequence in that amazing location they found, that long concrete corridor with the light coming in from above. Um, there's these little gaps on the sides that somebody could have fallen into, and so they had to put this like little safety fence all along the sides of the thing, and then we had to paint it out in all the shots. And so there's tons of visual effects like that where it's a safety issue, safety requirement. There's stunt mats, there's all kinds of stuff that like probably a good full half of the visual effects isn't doing magic and monsters and demons and things. It's purely just sort of assisting the rest of the production be able to be nimble and quick on set, and making sure that if there's safety equipment or camera people visible in reflections, things like that we just make all that go away. And so a huge part of it is just that work as well, just sort of working on the footage itself to sort of help eliminate all signs of it being filmed.
I was gonna say that you're talking about the finale and the scene in the corridor, and we talk about like the scene between Beatrice, Ava, and Adriel. Get these terraces that kind of appear, and you get different kind of lighting from behind with like the cross behind Beatrice and Ava. Um, Wanted to ask a little bit about how like the lighting aspect kind of ends up being sort of um, part of the construction, and how the tone of it, like the lighting, as far as like the tone and the darkness, kind of also plays in and adds into the suspense sort of elements, and what the construction behind that looks like.
Well, a lot of that isn't us in visual effects. The lighting's done by the pros on set to a great degree. Anytime we've added sort of an effect as far as like the Trasks or the crown, or the portal, things like that. Some of Eva's glowing halo rays and things like that. We've had to add things, and make sure that we've added and adjusted the footage in a way that feels realistic or plausible as far as that effect being there, right? Make sure that there's a sense of it, lighting up the room or creating shadows. But I think the real magic for the mood comes after we've done our work. We wrap up the visual effects on sort of the original footage, and then the entire show goes off to color grading, where they really push and pull the footage in different directions to sort of set a tone or mood. And again, that's exciting for us because we don't get to see it. We're working on making sure that our visual effects fits in with the footage kind of as shot, and it all looks a little dull as we're working on it because it's like messing around with the filters on your phone on a photograph, where you shoot something and it looks okay, and you go in there and you add a look, or you add some color warmth, or you cool it down, or you sort of strengthen the shadows. The same effect happens on the entire show, right, when it's done. And so that part of color grading happens on top of the visual effects as well. And then we get to see it, oh, hey, look, they took this whole scene and made it whatever orange because of Adriel's burning light. And so now the whole wing fight in Lilith's house has kind of an orange cast, which is cool, right? We
Mm-hmm.
sometimes get to see early versions of that, but that's another thing that gets finished once the visual effects are done. The sort of color grading to help reinforce the narrative feeling that they're trying to get out of the footage sort of happens late in the process. So
Well, a lot of people are in love with the Tarrasques. They're kind of like grotesque and bumbly, but they're like so lovable sort of at the same time. Um, what has been your favorite aspect of kind of constructing the Tarrasque? And of course, people want to know if you have named any of them like the fans have named Carl as
No, we've
one.
adopted that name. We heard it after season one somewhere that the fans are calling the Tarrasque Carl, and so we sometimes use that name at the studio now. Um, the Tarrasque was interesting. We went through a round of sort of concept art with Simon on season one to sort of figure out what exactly the Tarrasque should look like. And the most important thing was that it needed to feel like something that would have been written down in the history books as a demon, right? It had to have the horns and it had to have, sort of the sense of hoofs and a sense of wings. And none of those things needed to actually be horns, hooves, or wings. It just needed to be sort of in the right visual flavor so that we could imagine 1,000 years of history of these things coming to Earth looking for the halo, having been documented as more what we all imagine as classical kind of demons. And the other sort of design requirement was that it needed to have a bit of like a metallic feeling. So we needed to sort of figure out sort of a little bit of a scaly exterior with a sense of sort of reflectance, so that as it was revealed in whatever episode 10, I think, of season one, that divinium is made of the Tarrasques, that or at least whatever Adriel's story combined with Ava's memory vision told that story, that it would be less of a jump for the audience to sort of say, oh, okay, these shiny things, that's what made the metal, right? The blue glowing metal when the halo bearer gets close. So yeah, that's how that process went. We went through a whole bunch of design revisions and ended up as this like hulking spiky horns with almost like a antler shield kind of thing. And anyway, yeah, it's fun. We wanted it to have a sense of like demonic hotness to it, as far as like not, not
Yeah, I know, not like
yeah
yeah.
sparky and high temperature hotness, as it came through from wherever it comes from into our world. It sort of sheds all these like sparks and smoke and ashes and things, and so that was another sort of need for the creature in season one, and we carried that into season two. One of my favorite shots of the Tarrasques, I think, is actually just in season one, where you just see his little feet stomping along the floor before he goes and reveals that that's why he's there. Is he flips Shannon's corpse over in the church at the start and reveals the fact that he's on the look for the halo. And so that was a fun moment, just doing these close up like metallic sort of hoofs covered in sparks and ashes and smoke walking along the floor. So yeah.
Is this when you're working on the Tarrasque, is this something that like you kind of refined or extended for season two, or since you had the original concept for the Tarrasque from season one, they just kind of remain the same? Or did they kind of level up, like I was saying, as so
Well,
much of season two really has?
I don't know. I don't know if they leveled up. The Tarrasques in season two, like the Wraiths actually changed a little bit more in season two than the Tarrasques did. The Tarrasques had a very similar job in season two to season one, where they show up and are a threat, and sort of it's a near miss trying to get the halo, and then Ava and Beatrice flew away in the church. We knew we were doing more than one of them, and so we wanted to make sure that they were different from each other, and so we had to have different whatever horn arrangements and things to give them all a little uniqueness. So if the fans want to go and nickname all of them for us, we'd be happy to carry that into season 3 if that happens. But yeah, we had to make them all a little bit different from each other. Even in season 1, there was 2 different Tarrasques because one got beheaded, right, 1,000 years ago, and then the other one was running around chasing Eva in present time. So even that one did look different as well. So yeah, we had to do different sort of horns and sparks and things on all these Tarrasques. But no, other than knowing we were going to have 6 of them in a shot at once, we didn't really have to do too much new with the Tarrasques. They had to act a little bit differently in the place where you go when you're wearing the crown. They're not hot there. They kind of reveal out of the smoky darkness a little differently and disappear into the smoky darkness. So that was a little bit different, but no, other than that, they're very similar to season 1. The wraiths, though, the wraith demons had a bit more to do because we had this whole possession sequence in episode 4, I believe, in the church, and we had to figure out how we were going, because I think we blew up a couple wraiths in season 1. She stabs one in the meat fight with the guy, and which is actually kind of funny that the nicknames we give sequences internally is because we're working on so much footage, and like season 1 had 600 shots, season 2 had 800 shots, and so it's just so many numbers for all these shot numbers that we end up nicknaming sequences. And so we call that just the meat fight in season 1. And yeah, we had to blow up a wraith there. In season 2, in the church fight, or the possession sequence in the church, we had to actually have wraiths go into people and see it close up. So we had to figure out a new way to do that. And so the sort of idea of this sort of sense of a skull that's in these wraiths kind of comes down and sort of absorbs into you. And that looked very interesting on screen, having that. We got to do that twice. The girl that comes up and volunteers to be possessed, and then with Miguel when he volunteers and it goes into him as well. And so we got a really nice moment of having this sort of skull absorption kind of effect, and that was a new thing we had to do with the wraiths. So yeah, no, it's fun. It's fun to having these creatures in one season and then be able to sort of polish them up and use them again, right? And so that's always cool to sort of get a second kick at taking something you've made and doing it again, but maybe a little bit better. So yeah, as far as nicknaming sequences goes, though, that's kind of one of the funniest things about working on the show, is that we live in our own little bubble with our team working on all this stuff. And so to remember what we're talking about, we end up calling things like the meat fight, or I think Michael in season 1, Ava shows up and gets close to him, and reveals that he's got divinium in him, which I think was how Adriel was giving him instructions on how to build a portal machine. And so we just nicknamed that whole sequence like Little Boy Blue. And it's funny because we use these names all the time internally, and then we get on a call with the showrunner, with Simon, and with the rest of the host team, and we start talking about the sequence names, and we're like, oh yeah, whatever, let's bring up the shot from the Little Boy Blue. And then they start laughing because, of course, we'll have been using these things internally for weeks, and then finally, we say something like that, and they're like, "What? Little Boy Blue? Okay," and they laugh, and we move along. Season 2 had some of that as well, where we're talking about the church fight and the possession sequence, and like the rooftop, and Adriel's like power fight with Ava at the end, things like that. But then, of course, every now and again, we end up slipping up, and we start talking about like, oh yeah, remember those 3 shots with Pope Krispies? And then Simon's like, what? We're like, oh yeah, sorry, Pope Krispies. And then of course, it's funny. He ends up adopting the same nicknames for sequences sometimes when talking to us. So it's just kind of funny. But yeah, so we had 3 shots of Pope Krispies where the Pope got crispied. But yeah.
Do you ever get kind of like feedback from the actors then? Obviously more so, I guess now, when once it's all put together, that say like, oh my gosh, like I'm looking at this shot and damn, that we're, like, wow, you guys really, step things up, and I can't believe that, you're able to make this scene so, such a, so cool, and construct these little details.
I mean, we talked to them on set. I wasn't on set for Warrior Nun. We sent a couple of guys on set. Winston Helgeson, the founder and owner of the company, was there. He does a lot of our client relations. Paul Copeland, Bernie, and Neil all ended up going on set, and they end up talking to the actors a little bit about sort of the previous season and things. But most of the time, we don't. We hear from the showrunners, and we hear sort of it in like general sense, but we don't get that much feedback about our work because the delay between the filming and the post work wrapping is so long that everyone's in a new world, right? Even now, we started working on the footage for season 2, I think last January or December, and so and then we started working on development of like wings and stuff even like the spring before that. And so if you can imagine that I can't remember when they wrapped shooting, but if we didn't get the footage, even the first anything from the first episode till like January or late December 2021, then this is like whatever, a year and a half later for the actors, right? And so everyone's off on new projects and doing new things, and so the delay causes such a break that it's not like, hey, I just made this thing, I get to see what it looks like. They don't get to see anything until they see it on screen way later. And so but Twitter's interesting because it lets you have sort of quick easy connections with people, even if they're in very different parts of the development process and stuff. And so it's funny, I've um, gotten some responses from William, who plays Adriel, about the fact that he was so excited to see all our work come together as far as assisting him looking like the powerful creature he was, I guess, right, with his like zapping abilities and taking a sword to the back and repairing his face and all the things. Um, and apparently the actress that plays Lilith had a good reaction when she saw the how the wings came out, which is always nice to hear because you hope that everyone's standing around on set having to imagine all these things that we at least live up to their imagination or do better. But that's a big responsibility to have, to try to sort of make sure that it meets the same kind of quality bar and creativity that everyone is imagining it's going to come out as. But yeah, the delay between the filming and the editing and then us working on the footage is so long that there's a pretty big break in sort of reaction times. But yeah, and of course, for some people like say Simon, who we're showing stuff to every week, he none of it's a surprise for him. He kind of gets to see it all the way through from start to finish.
Right.
And so I think he probably gets a smile on his face when he gets to see some of the other actors and the huge talented team that put this stuff together get to see the final product, right? And so it's always fun to sort of see it, see the gift wrapping come off and it finished. So yeah.
Well, you talk about Lilith's wings, and they are also one of the cool elements from season 2 that got added in, for her character arc. And then visually, they kind of sort of become when I watch, at least they feel sort of like this, an extension of her, or her growing persona as she becomes, her tumultuous angst and emotionalism that is bubbling underneath. Uh, but in a recent interview, Simon had mentioned that Lilith's wings were kind of an expensive piece, and couldn't be used as much in the finale. So I wanted to ask a little bit about, is that due to like the extensiveness of the time to create them, or what goes into the piecework of her wings?
Um, it's not that they're expensive per se, because once you've got the development of them and you can get them into shots, it's just math more than anything. And unfortunately, the realities of production end up, if we had all the time and schedule and money in the world, we could have put wings on everybody all the time. And so, but it just ends up happening that I think episode 10, from when they jump through the hole and end up down in the lower levels where Adriel's whatever inverted cathedral thing is, where the arc was. That sequence had so many shots because it had to deal with portal being on all the time. Rhea with the wraiths in there, the wraiths kicking Rhea out. It had Adriel's fight with Ava. It had Lilith's fight with Ava with her phasing around. It had the Divinium, sorry, the Lilith phasing around, ripping Michael's heart out, Michael dying. It had halos. It had six Trasks show up and rip Adriel apart. It had the Trasks then phase away. It had Rhea go back into the portal. We had to carry Ava up to the portal. We had to put Ava in the portal. Like, there was so much stuff going on there's so many shots in episode 8 that I think just the math of the dollar value on the shots was being large enough that we had to look at ways to reduce some of the complexity. And it's not that it got less ambitious. I think the final result, again, this is a sort of like you're baking the cake and you just get to see the cake when it's done. But I think that in a perfect world, that space would have been amazing to have a flying Lilith fighting Ava in, right? But I just don't think there just with the realities of the shot count in episode 8, that was something that that there was time to pull off. And so yeah, instead, Lilith phases around, and we sort of get a nice moment with the wings before she sort of
Disappears.
says bye for the season. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think the what was maybe on the page in the script, I think a lot of, like, it's not just that. A lot of stuff changes because you might find a location that is like, wow, this is amazing, and now we can do this here, or we can tell this story a little bit differently, or we can I think the process informs the story a lot of the way through. And so it's not even that in the end that something's missing, because I think if you think of it that way, you'd end up with so much having changed from maybe what got laid down in the page initially, that you'd be like, oh, we had to change everything. But that's not really the case. That's just how you make TV and film, right? I think that's the process evolves the whole way through. And to a great degree, it makes it all stronger because you're reacting to changes, or you're adapting on the fly and say, oh wow, this angle or this location, or we can put in something here, tells the story better. And so it's not usually that it even suffers from changes. It usually is stronger because of them. And so it's a case of that. And yeah, math, time, and budget does affect things as well. And ideally you end up in a world where the story is strong, and the narrative is well told. And if something got left on the cutting room floor, nobody's the wiser. And so it's only Simon that's ruined that now by mentioning it. You fool, Simon. Don't tell the secrets of how we make it. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I loved the wing set that we got to see from her. Love to see like a little bit more close up, love to see the expanse, especially now that she's kind of disappeared and we don't know whose side she's going to be on. But the visual the visual aspect of her character this season has been quite stunning. And then the added makeup work that also in tandem kind of amplifies the visual and really kind of enhances all of that as well. Was
Yeah, I mean
gorgeous to
that's
blend
actually a
it
really
all
good.
together.
Yeah, that's actually a really good example of sort of the process because you know, a lot of what went into Lilith this season helped make her feel monstrous, I guess. Where in episode one we had that massive shot where she had to teleport around and kill all the guards, which was that was the hardest shot of the entire season. That thing took so much work because of how long it was and how many different pieces of footage it was made up of. It was filmed on like a robotic arm so that the move could be repeated and they could film part of it here and part of it there and then we could do the teleporting between them. um but yeah, she really had sort of a monster arc where she was developing these powers and I guess, you know, internalized that to a certain degree and then went looking for answers, looking for someone that could that wouldn't reject her, and she found Adriel, right? And so um yeah, it was interesting to have the wings be part of that story where, you know, she wrapped them up when we first revealed them, and then we got a nice sort of big fight with them in episode 7 where her and Ava fight in her house with the wings. So yeah, and that's all a combination of the actors on set and stunt doubles and some wire work, and then we actually had fully CG Lilith and Ava for a good portion of that as well, right? Where they're because you the shot of them phasing around the empty room until Ava lands on the sword was all done with 3D models of them.
Wow.
So we had to get all the actors scanned and then develop the sort of like lighting and rendering of them to be able to do 3D versions of them. And we used them throughout the season. We had a 3D version of Adriel that helped you know, tear him apart at the end. We had Ava and Lilith. We had Ava and B for Beatrice for when they end up some of the stuff in the church fight and coming out of the stained glass window. There's a few cases here and there where there's 3D models of them sprinkled in amongst the effects of them on wires or you know on green screen. So yeah, also when Ava was up in the air suspended over the when she came out of the building, phased out of
Right.
the building and realized she was whatever 20 stories up.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a 3D Ava that falls from there too. Yeah, all kinds of stuff. So, you know, again, it should be hard to tell because that's the point of it, right? So it should just look like it's all Ava. So
One of the really cool details is I say one, but every single detail, like I keep saying, it's just been such an incredible pleasure to see and just be so intrigued by. But like, wanted to ask specifically more about the plagues that we got to see this season, between like the locusts and the fog of things, um, and talk a little bit about the work that went into those, especially because we sort of pretend to see bee capture one of the locusts at a time.
yeah. So again, when we read through the scripts, the all the different plagues seemed very much within our sort of wheelhouse of things to have to work on. And in the end, through the process, some of them weren't. So the locusts, yes, they're primarily a big cloud of 3D bugs. Um, they had a handful of little rubber bugs on set that they bounced off Father Vincent and that couple that he's talking to when they're looking at Adriel, just so that there was something on set. But otherwise, the locusts are all 3D. The big cloud in the distance, when Adriel kind of reveals himself and stops them. And then there's even like there's 3D ones in the water, floating in the water and stuff. So those are all 3D. The one Beatrice catches in the car is 3D. That was done with, she was just looking in the back seat, and we basically put the locust where she was looking so that it made sense, right? We went off her cues, and then she catches it, and I think her hand actually goes slightly below the headrest of the car and comes back up, and she's holding a little green stand-in object that's kind of the width of a bug. And then she like looks at it, and then that's, and then she releases it or whatever. That's the end of the shot. And the all we did was basically paint out the thing she was holding and replace it with a little 3D bug that we tracked in there and had it, squirming a little bit. And so, yep, that's all visual effects. And the actors just have to, they're just really good at their jobs and have to imagine, what it is that they're dealing with. Which is probably a lot like doing theater, where there isn't really sets and there isn't really anything to work off of. You just have to imagine it all and play to an audience, and that's what they do, and they do a great job at it. And so the other plagues were what, the burning light,
Right.
which we did some little sort of sizzling effect for that on Ava's hands and on Vincent's hand. Trying to remember what the other, the fog. The
Right.
fog was all done practically with smoke machines and things in that graveyard. And so that played really well with the guys running around in the gas masks. There was a moment where Ava looks at Michael, or Miguel at the time, and sort of gets this sort of horrific vision. And that part we had to do, where we added this sort of like expanding creepy black features to his face, sort of this darkness around his eyes, and we had to take a couple takes of that to figure out what the right tone for the shot was. But I think we ended up in a place where when you watch it on the run, we watch things on a loop. We watch the same footage and the same shot again and again and again and try to make sure the story's told. But when you watch it in the show and it goes by once, it has a really nice impact, the way it kind of like spreads and grows and is creepy, and then it cuts away and she's like, whoa, and then that works pretty well. I don't think, was there any other plagues? I don't know. There was the bugs and the fog and the burning light, and I think there was, in the story, there was some kind of like disfigurement or boils or something that was supposed to have happened before the season started. So yeah, no, we didn't have to do anything for that. But yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I'm Jewish, and so it's kind of like thinking about Passover, like the looks, the frogs, the the locusts.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much of the show can be drawn from, any particular documents or actual, scripture. I think it's very much the idea that maybe something's out there and maybe it's all been misunderstood, right? And so, and then like kind of Beatrice says in season 2, if Adriel can suck up the prayers with his copper cross or whatever that was in his cathedral, who are we even praying to, right? And so it's interesting in that way, and it brings up, I think, a really good part of the show is it brings up sort of the human aspect of of convictions and beliefs, but I don't think it should probably be taken too literally as far as intruding on anyone's thoughts on how the universe really works. I think it's a fantasy drama show about people struggling with real things,
Right.
but I'm not sure that the show's trying to answer any big questions.
No, well, it poses a lot of questions for
It
sure.
poses a lot. Yeah.
Answers,
Yeah.
answers don't really come too often, but
Yeah.
that's what I love about it, that it does keep you kind of theorizing and thinking about things in a grander scale rather than just not necessarily as to, okay, what's going to happen with these characters, but like the grander scale of life and religion and our
I think
our
Simon hit a really interesting middle ground between the relationships between the characters and a bigger story and what's really going on with Jillian and the portals and this sense of another place. Um And whether we get to explore that at some point, that would be really interesting. I don't know. But either way, I think the humor in the show combined with the sort of dramatic arc of high stakes, what happens if Adriel gets the halo, what happens if Adriel can imprison Rhea with the crown, all these things. I think that it had just enough of all these different elements to resonate with a whole wide group of people, because you can watch it for the badass nuns with guns. You can watch it for um, the relationship that develops between Ava and Beatrice. You can watch it for a whole bunch of different reasons, and everybody gets something pretty satisfying out of it, I think. And so I think that the show, the writing of the show, the cast, the crew, everything kind of came together in a way, and it hit a lot of different marks, which is, I think, why it's been as successful as it has been. Particularly shooting in Europe, I think, is huge, because it gives the show. We're not on planet rainforest in Vancouver, which is where
A lot
so
of
many shows. I'm in Vancouver, Canada, and uh, I've worked on so many shows that end up at Planet Rainforest, right? Like everything from all the Stargates and everything shot here ends up at in the rainforest, because it's the location we have. And so having a show not end up on Planet Rainforest is refreshing to a great degree, and I think gives the show a feeling of um, cinematic kind of grandeur that it wouldn't have if it was kind of a more traditional sort of Vancouver TV show. So that's been it's funny because everyone imagines it as a this is really interesting European show, and to me it's a Vancouver TV show shot in Europe with European actors, and that makes it so much more interesting, right? But it's a fantasy show about nuns with guns, and so but it's fantastic, sort of what all the different elements bring to it, and so um yeah, I think that it's been successful because of all those things.
yes, we get nuns with guns, season two sisters with swords.
Yeah,
We get
well, we got Sister Dora. She's got guns. She's got the
yeah.
yeah, she does. So yeah, we still was nuns with guns.
Oh yeah, that does that part that part. We would never forget the we get Camilla and her gadgets, and we get nuns with guns. We get this.
Well, I mean, just Mother Superior and Suzanne's backstory alone, the fact that she you know defended the Pope in the hotel, defended saw her backstory with the swords against all those the whatever they were, bad guys that had the nuns trapped, and then her defending the Jillian and the Ark from getting taken in Jillian's house. I think we had a plenty of nuns with guns this season, and those sequences were amazing to work on. I'm really I think that's some of my favorite stuff from season two is sort of all the crazy stuff with Mother Superior and her just cleaning up. That's fantastic to work on. So yeah.
Oh my gosh, Sylvia this season like absolutely brought down everything. I mean, like you said, the backstory that we get to see for her, we get to see the woman she became because, the mother superior that she became because of what she struggled with or what she went through or and then like you also said earlier on when we were talking about this is that, how the Halo kind of treated her differently than it does treat Ava as well.
Yeah, I think I'm not privy to all of the lore that probably exists in Simon's head. I mean, I'm not entirely sure that he's got every last detail worked out. I think you can't really work that way, because I think you have to be able to cope with changes with actors and locations and all the things. But I think it just the Halo whatever enhances powers that the person either I think it's individual to the Halo bearer to some degree, and so I think they wanted to make sure that Suzanne had some different abilities, and so she does some kind of like magic stun thing to Suzanne, and then she fires up a shield, and that was cool to work on as well. Developing a look for that and how sort of bullets react to the surface of it. And then she runs around and is an absolute badass fighting all those guys, right? And so that was super fun, and it was really fun to actually see when the trailer, one of the trailers came out with some of those sequences in it. Um, I was looking around, and some of the fans were trying to figure out, like, oh, that must be, that can't be Ava doing all like these like side flips with the sword, but the sword's glowing. So who is this? And they thought, oh, maybe it's Beatrice and Ava's close by, and Beatrice has the sword. And so because you couldn't tell who it was, because they left that as something to reveal in the show. And so it was really fun to sort of then see, people's reactions to, oh, wow, we're getting, Suzanne's backstory here. That's cool. And you kind of get to see a nun not just at full power, but overconfident, which is to some degree why
Right.
what happened with the Halo. And so that was a real joy to sort of see that play out. And that sequence is edited very well together, with her fighting all those guys and dispatching them all. So yeah, good stuff.
I was gonna say, I mean, you're like we talk about part of social media, and you answer a lot of amazing fan questions, and take your time to respond to certain comments amongst people getting to check out the show. But you get to see a lot of theories and a little like people trying to figure out the Easter eggs of sorts. Is there any that people have hit on that you kind of like either um people haven't noticed yet, or people have sort of touched on that maybe they aren't aware of that what might be have been a VFX?
Um, I like read that stuff's fun to read just because the fan involvement is so high. Easter eggs that they've figured out. I don't know. I think there's sort of a lot of stuff in the show that is in place, um so that if it gets a chance to tell a longer, bigger story, I think there's more things that can kind of be revealed over time. But I think in the context of season 1 and 2, I'm not sure that there's that much to sort of there's sort of that much hidden stuff to sort of figure out. I know that, again, like from the trailers, people watched it and were like, oh, they noticed that Beatrice had a glowing cross or pendant in a shot, and they were trying to figure out, oh, is that divinium, and what does that mean, and why does she have that, and did Ava give her that? They were trying to figure all these things out, and of course, when the show comes out, you realize that it's the secret nun beacon to be able to send messages back and forth instead. And yet there still was a divinium cross in the show, which Sister Yasmin had to help her identify the warrior nun so that she wouldn't spill the secrets of her sect to anybody but the right person. So it's just, that's kind of interesting that they had kind of hit on something that actually was in the show, even though what was in the trailer was something different. And so that was kind of interesting to see. I'm not sure if there's any other things like that. I don't know. I think people trying to figure it all out is great, and I hope that there's an opportunity to sort of you know uh, validate their theories, or disappoint them by having something else be the true reasons, right? And dash their ideas on the rocks and have them be like, oh, but this is really happening. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know what's to come in the future, but I'm excited to sort of be part of it if that's what we get to do. So
I I know Simon mentioned in a recent interview about when we get the post credit scene and we see the sword glowing, that Ava's kind of already back in the realm. But would you like to explore more of like the Rhea world and the graphics in that regard?
Maybe. I'm up for anything Simon wants to do. He wants to go to the other world. Let's go to the other world. We want to stay here. Let's do that. Have new creatures come here or other adversaries. I'm in for any of it. I'm just excited. The yeah, the post credit scene. That's all. What that means and what that means to the story and whether Ava is theoretically just off camera, glowing the sword up. That's all on Simon. All that I know about that is we got a shot with the sword in a glass case and we had to make it go glow blue. So we made it glow blue and sent it off and it's in the show. The deeper meaning behind many of these things, I don't, I have no insight to. And so all we can do is really sort of work with the story at hand and tell the best story we can. And then any further sort of secrets that might be sort of revealed later is something that we have no control of. As far as exploring other realms and things, I don't know. I'm of two minds about that because one, of course, it'd be interesting to go make whatever this universe version of Asgard or something, like from Thor. They said we could go and create all kinds of interesting visuals for that kind of thing. But I think the series stays more grounded in its roots of human struggling with human issues, with life, with belief, if it stays here. And so I don't know. I don't know where it's going to go. But if new things come to Earth and there's new challenges here, I think that's exciting. I think if the chessboard moves somewhere else and it turns into a space show where we're visiting new planets and things, I think that's a very different show. I have a feeling that's not really the intent. I think that the show needs to stay in a relatively grounded kind of place, and then I think you lose all the advantage of the flavor of shooting in Europe and sort of the weight that gives the show because you have all of this history and all of this past that sort of lends itself to some of these concepts of the show. Having the show take place somewhere else where you have wraiths and demons running around and Ava. I don't know. Maybe I'm excited. I mean, I'm sure that would be amazing too. I think a great part of the story has to be told here with us, with our struggles and our beliefs. Otherwise, yeah, you could get into some kind of magic realm adventures real quick, and I'm not sure that's really the intent or where we're going. But I have no idea until a script shows up for me. I have no knowledge of that stuff. So.
Well,
And I
setting
probably shouldn't. Simon probably shouldn't come to me and ask me ideas of where I want to go with the show, because that's not my job. That's his job. And, I'm just a fan as far as that goes too. So.
the setting definitely really roots a lot of the storyline as well, like the religious aspects, the historical aspects, and things like that as well. So yeah, if you go into another dimension, maybe that world doesn't offer as much of that tangibleness that we can reflect on, or even
I mean,
relate.
if it's a version of our world or something, sure, right? Then we can still run around Europe, and it's the bizarro world where things are a different way. I don't know. Yeah, but I think the show would lose something if we ended up on a green screen all the time, trying to create um, Adriel's house or something. But we'll see. I have no idea, no clue. I'm up for it though. Let's go.
I've been watching the Apple show The Peripheral, and that's a show like when you're talking about like another version of like of locations like it's like London in like 2050 something or other. I don't know the specifics, like 2603 or something. So yeah,
But that's cool because that's filming at a place and taking a place and then enhancing it, trying to sort of give it give it a new spin, a new take, right? Which there's something to be said for doing that kind of work where you can where at least stays grounded in a place, and then you take a new spin on it. I actually quite liked working on the footage from season one where we were in the past, because in season one we had that whole sequence, the sort of memory flash thing, where Ava sort of learned another version of the events. Like it plays over Adriel saying one thing, and you see it differently. And I think that's one of the most interesting things in the show, is that you don't really know who to believe, even as people are telling you information. And so we got to do work on all this footage set in whatever 1000 AD, and we also got to do an entire sequence where we take where these events happened and show changes over time to modern day Vatican City, and then we reveal that that's where those events transpired, and that's where Adriel's tomb was. It's right below the Vatican. And so visiting the past was quite interesting in those cases. Even the shot where Adriel flies down and dramatically gives the halo to Ariella in the past, which I think was the stories written in the books, or maybe the stories that are told about how the halo first came to be. And of course that wasn't really, Adriel was on the run to some degree, and with a Trask chasing him, which is how that actually worked. But yeah, going to the past was interesting. But sure, if we're going to go to the future, let's go to the future too. I don't know. Play around with time travel. I don't know. A whole time travel episode would be interesting. Trying to keep them from bumping into each other. I don't know. That seems like a different show to me. But again, I don't work in the writers' room, so but
I
I'm
mean,
excited about it.
I mean, when people phase in and out, do we know where they're specifically going?
I I don't. Simon May. I have no insight on that, other than I got some notes on how it should look, and that's it. And so we developed a pretty interesting way to handle that. We had to deal with it going in slow motion in shots in season two. We had to deal with all these multiple phasings around when Lilith is phasing in that big fight in the end of season episode one, where she tears limbs off people and scratches the guy's back, and to death. Her phasing is a little bit different than Ava's phasing, and the Trask's phasing is a little bit different from both of them. And whether that's a stylistic choice or whether there's some deeper meaning there, I don't have those answers. I just know to make it look cool, and that this Trask phasing needs to be this kind of like sparky hot friction of coming into our world to some degree, and that Lilith's phasing has a bit of that character, and Ava's phasing is a little bit different. But if there's a secret there, I don't know what it is, but maybe there is. We'll see. Maybe.
Well, just to kind of wrap things up, is there any other projects that you have working on that you can talk about, or anything maybe that you and I didn't speak about VFX wise or from the series specifically that like to make sure that we mention too?
I don't think so. We're busy. We wrapped up our work on season two at the very start of September. And yeah, we're starting on other things now. The studio's busy. And if you work in visual effects or you want to, please go to look up the embassy and come apply, because we're always looking for talented people. And maybe you'll get a chance to work on more Warrior Nun stuff if it happens. But no, I don't think so. I think I'm just excited that the fans had such a good reaction. I feel privileged to get to work on creative projects like this with a huge creative team, and yeah, I'm just excited to see what's next. The projects we're working on right now, I don't know if like the reason even talking about Warrior Nun on Twitter is before it aired, I was cagey with answers because I'm not in control of information and what can be sort of said, right? That's not my job isn't to do PR and figure out how people want to release information about things. And so other than speaking about things that I'm directly involved with the visual effects, I have no public opinion on any of it. And so like the show we're starting to work on now, again, I'm not in control of when information can be revealed, and so I have to sort of keep that to myself. Um, but yeah, we're always working on cool stuff, creative things, and I hope to work with on more Warrior Nun stuff if it happens. Again, I have no insight into that either. Nothing. Or anything else, Simon cooks up in his head. I'd be happy to help work on because it's one of the funnest, most creative projects we've had. Because he lets us sort of contribute as much as we can to these things. So yeah, it's been great to work on, and it's been fun to see the fans react so well to it. So good stuff.
Well, again, we do appreciate the wealth that you have been sharing, the time that you spend to kind of go through some of the questions online and answer fans or just make a kind comment on like an edit or an artwork or just
It's so little effort, right? Like I'm working on other things, and sometimes I'll just have it up and look for things, and I'm happy to just answer questions if anybody else wants to interview me or fire me a question, I'm happy to do that. It's not a big deal. So ask away, and I can reveal all of the secrets that I know, but they're not that interesting. they're not the stuff that people really want to know. Like, oh, how does this work? How does that work? I don't know. I just make it look cool and help tell the story. You know, there's even some stuff that we ended up coming up with um, during the process, right? Because again, as you spot all the footage, you find moments where it might be nice to have something, visual effects wise, and um, there's a few moments like where Ava almost detonates the divinium in Michael. They sort of miss their chance when Beatrice stops her, and there's a moment when she almost like whatever supercharges Michael there on the stage in 206, and that was one where we were watching it and we thought, oh, you know what, it would be cool. And this it wasn't even necessarily intended, but we were watching it and we thought, oh, that might be cool to have like a moment where you can sort of see the glow start to build as if she's going to like actually do it, and it sort of ups the stakes of the moment and things like that. And so it's just fun to be able to contribute to the process, and help tell the story. And it's a bit of a gift from Simon to us to help let us sort of help him tell the story. So yeah, it's cool.